I am here with Sam Hill from Snackfolio, and I'm really excited to interview Sam. Sam, I will ask you to introduce yourself here in a second, but just as a lead up, I encountered Sam just on my social feeds, and he had recorded a video just about his program. And I saw it, I was like, oh, that's really interesting. Vending, as a lot of you know, is a staple in the passive income kind of world. And there hasn't really been a new spin to it that I've seen. The way Sam had approached it really spoke to me, and he spoke to it from return on investment perspective. But yeah, that's that. First, I noticed him there, signed up. I had a call with him. The call was like fresh. It's just refreshing, right? To talk to someone down to earth, and really be transparent about all of the things that are going on in his program. And that's really the focus of what I'm trying to bring to you guys is legitimate, transparent programs that really do what they say they're going to do. So I actually bought into his course and I'm going through it right now. And all of the stuff that, he's got in his courses has been great. So we'll get into all of that, but I just wanted to have that as the intro. And Sam, I'll have you introduce yourself for a second here.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me and great to be with you all virtually. My name is Sam. I live in the Southeast, Birmingham, Alabama. I've also lived in Kentucky. And short and sweet is my wife and I have always had a interest in all things passive income. We've always kind of been entrepreneurial, small business oriented. I graduated from college at University of Georgia. Go Dogs, as a side note. And then we got into franchise ownership and in the home services space. And then we've both had traditional jobs and we've been longtime real estate investors. So the short and sweet on my vending journey is I have invested in real estate, pushing kind of all of our chips in on down payments, put a renter in, kind of typical buy and hold stuff. And the last couple of years, it's got really expensive. Interest rates and taxes and insurance, everything's just upward trend and shows no signs of really slowing down. And so we just started looking for another passive income vehicle. And we looked at all types of stuff, Airbnbs and laundromats, and all of which were totally cool, but larger out of pocket, kind of slower impact process in terms of acquisition and really kind of seeing the impact on our family life. And so we found vending, which, as Mike said, is like an old staple. I mean, I've used a vending machine 1,000 times, but we then started to learn about sort of a modern approach and learning that this old school niche is going through a massive disruption. So that was super interesting to us. And yeah, we got into vending and we grew our business, got our first 4 locations without a website, without an email address, business email, without anything except just kind of working a really basic process that we now teach. And we were like, hey, there's something to this. And so as well as all the new construction that's been going on the last couple of years, you've got all the old school vending out there, old equipment. And then you've got all this new construction that doesn't have anything in it because they don't put in old equipment, right? And so it's kind of a double whammy in terms of opportunity. That's how we got our first couple locations, and we just kind of grown from there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Can you tell us more about like what can someone expect as far as like realistic numbers, right? I mean, you kind of had to start from scratch and kind of ideate this and kind of go
Yeah.
at, but yeah, now that you have some students go through the program, like what do you typically see?
For sure. So it all depends on the size of the location. So kind of the old school vending model. Most people think vending. They first go out and buy machines, like first thing out of the gates, which we don't. We recommend the opposite. It's the last thing to do. But typically you would go buy a machine and usually it's like cheaper is better. So you go find the cheapest machine. And then you go to a location and you basically, the old school pitch is, I've got a machine. If I can put it here, I'll pay you rent. That's kind of the old pitch, right? And that usually yields lower quality locations, meaning you've started off the relationship by basically saying, I'll pay you if I can put it here. And that really is difficult in the space. So what we did is we said, hey, we start out with new construction. Like a lot of people are like, let's just go check out these new construction apartments is where we started and where a lot of our students start. And we basically did the opposite. So we went in and did a consultation because, and I could talk about this whenever you want, but all the changes in the equipment style, it's gone from like old school punch combinations to smart markets. But the numbers, when you go higher end up the scale and you focus less on sort of number of locations, deeper margins, and you go for just larger locations, literally 200 to 400 to 700 unit apartment complexes, medical facilities, surgery centers, hospitals, sports training facilities, office complexes with 400 employees or more sitting there, manufacturing facilities with 1,000 12-hour shift workers, a week type thing. You would be shocked at some of the revenues that larger locations with the smart technology can do. A minimum standard we look for is about 150 potential users per day. Doesn't mean they're all using, but I mean, that'd be 150 apartment residents. And that's bare minimum. So it kind of goes to the point if you definitely want larger accounts versus like salon or something, which is great. It might work, but like 30, 40 people a day, it's going to be really thin. Or a break room at a car service center, it's going to be really thin. At an apartment complex with say 150 to 250, those can do 1,600 to $2,900 a month, some of our accounts, versus an old school vending machine at another location. Typically hear things like five, six, $700 a month, netting maybe $200 a month or something like that. When you go up the chain, we have some individual smart coolers that are doing over $4,000 a month. And then if you go way up the scale in terms of, for example, a manufacturing facility or a plant, employees where you've got 500 to 1,000, employees or plants, those can do 10, $15 a month. Not on a vending machine. At that point, it's going to be even an AI machine or a smart cooler. You're going to be doing what's called a micro market, which you've probably seen most common at an airport. Where it's sort of a self checkout. They're becoming more common all under the unattended retail. It's kind of the large umbrella we're talking about here. And that unattended retail technology, which you've seen at grocery stores, gas stations, airports, now just starting to flood very early still the vending space. So, I mean, we have students that have been in our program for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks that are on locations 2 and 3, and locations doing 1,500 all the way up to $3,500 a month in their first month. A couple of students have landed huge located sports training facilities and hospitals and things like that. So it's pretty exciting. Obviously, the range is based on location and the type of solution you put on site.
Yeah, and how much are
Yeah.
people like, how much does it take? Because obviously vending machines aren't free, and so do you typically finance it, or how do people do it?
Yeah, there's lots of ways. The model that we teach and I recommend is using financing. And we recommend that because I mean, we're former real estate investors where it's all about, OPM, other people's money is the typical model. I'm actually super conservative financially. Just like not, I'm a very frugal person. So it's funny that I say that, but it's all about cash flow. If you're confident in the location, then you can be really confident in the cash flow coming in. And so what I recommend to our mentorship students is location, location, location. Land that location first. And then I use the analogy of like buying a car. And so a smaller location is just going to need a car. Bigger location is going to need an SUV. Huge location is going to need the largest SUV you can find, maybe a passenger van, right? So those are different size smart markets is what we call them. Smart coolers, AI vending. I mean the same thing in all those examples. And so what I recommend you do is once you land on a unit that you like and go, hey, this is a good size smart cooler for this location, which we kind of have a matrix in a way that we determine that, then you go and shop your financing options. And so you've got manufacturer financing, which is always the best and easiest, most streamlined. It's just like send it, which they'll typically scrutinize your location too. If you're going to do manufacturer financing, as you might expect, which is good. That can actually give you kind of a second layer of confidence because they know what locations are going to work or not, which is you want to have a great manufacturer. It's kind of the Wild West. But we'll do manufacturer financing if we can, 0 down or maybe 10% down max. Your second tier for financing would be manufacturer recommends a private financing company who specializes in capital equipment, which is a whole kind of world in and of itself. It's actually really aggressive financing because there's equipment, it's secured, if you
Mm,
will, versus just
right.
getting funding for, I don't know, a future service or something. And then your third option on financing manufacturer would be first private financing by manufacturer referral. And then third would just be, your local credit union, bank, whatever you want to do. You can buy them outright, but I always tell my mentorship students, we really love when the users buying products, drinks, and snacks pay for all of our expenses. And so we've cash flowed 100% of our locations and units from the first month of all of them by using that strategy. Again, everything going back to location confidence.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of people when they first think about vending, they just kind of think about what they know, what they've been exposed to, which is just the traditional vending machines.
Yeah.
And so when they, "Oh, I should get into the vending business. When they think of that, they automatically go to vending machine. Like, what vending machine should I get? But I
Yes,
like your point of the actual key to success is the location. Like, if you can secure the
100%.
that's the huge key. And then I really loved, and that's really what intrigued me at first was you're turning this vending model into not just the location, but can you maximize that location for profit? Meaning you have higher end items in your smart cooler, in your vending machine, and you're
Yes.
getting more revenue per user.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. The average transaction size at a smart cooler, if you haven't seen a smart cooler, it's really simple. Old school vending machine, if you think about it, you just typically buy one thing at a time. You feed it your dollar or swipe your card and you punch in, D2 and the Snickers bar drops down or the Coke drops down. That's the typical usage, right? So most people only buy one thing at a vending machine. They just don't repeat the process. Think about the last 10 times you've used one. You probably bought one thing, not two. And so, as such, the average vending machine transaction historically is about a dollar to 250 as the average transaction across millions of machines across the country and North America. And so, with these smart coolers, the way they work is you go up and it's in just kind of a not open cooler, it's what's called a closed door locked solution. So it's locked, but you can see all the goods in there and you tap your card and it unlocks the doors. Now, when you tap your card, it runs a pre authorization if you do it right, just like at the gas pump. If you're in a higher end facility, you're confident in the users and the security and things like that. And typically, property managers don't want any problems either. So they'll help you out and good communication with them, et cetera. But the trick is when they tap their card one time, they can get as many things as they want under one transaction. So you tap your card, you can open both doors, single door, and now all of a sudden it's a market experience, is what you call it. Just grabbing things to put in your, imaginary basket or whatever. And so as such, the app transaction, some locations $5, $6, which is now 2x, 3x, an old school
Yeah.
vending machine. Some locations it can be as high as $15. And so now you're selling, beverages of all different varieties, on the location type. Gyms are different than apartment complexes than in maybe an office. But the trick is now you can offer things like noodle bowls or things that can be that are frozen in cooler sections. So now they're grabbing like a bowl for later. They're grabbing a snack, popcorn, beef jerky. I mean, you name it. And now all of a sudden they filled up their shopping cart, with lots of things. So that's the goal. Incidentals too. You can do all that.
Awesome. Yeah, I really love that because with the typical vending machine, like you said, you're pressing, E5 or whatever,
Hmm. Yeah.
and you have to specify each item, right? Whereas this smart cooler, you just open it up, the whole inventory is available. So I feel
Yes.
like for the typical person, like they'd be more willing to pick multiple items. It's all available to you. You don't have to individually press each selection.
100%. And most of the smart coolers, the prices aren't even listed. And so now there's a kind of a, ethical agreement where we usually our property managers are just sort of, hey, like what are the prices? And our explanation is, hey, it's kind of like having a convenience store or a market, 7-Eleven, wherever your, favorite market is, right here. And so instead of having to drive and leave property to go get a Coke or an energy drink or a cold brew coffee, is right here. And so you charge what we call a convenience premium, and that just means for a 17-ounce bottle of Coke, you might charge anywhere from 250 to 20, which is completely in alignment if they went and got it from a gas station or a grocery store, a single Coke, and so that convenience premium and that profit margin's really great. Like you said, people get multiple things at once and the transactions can really go up. We have some locations where people use it for weekend friends are over. I mean, every weekend we have several transactions at our locations that are between 50 to $125 at apartment complexes. One single transaction. Our all-time records over $300. Somebody literally was there. They
Wow.
had probably it was like a college reunion. You could see them all because it's video recorded.
Yeah.
And they just took a lot. Probably took half the cooler in that particular example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And that actually brings me to another question of this is meant to be passive income.
Hmm.
And I know a lot of the stuff, the conversations that I've read in our community around vending machines is, hey, vending machines, it's not passive. Like, you buy these vending machines, you have to stock them, you have to go
Right.
check up on them, they break
Hmm.
down, da 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 da. So how
Yeah.
do you I mean, my contention is, hey, nothing is completely passive outside of maybe some like financial investments, right? But there should it's more like leveraged income where you put in some work up front, you kind of build up your assets that way, and then it should be little maintenance going forward. So how do you make this business as passive as possible?
Yeah, great question. So there's a few things you can do as far as making it passive, more automated. The first is on the front end on the marketing side. We do a lot of ongoing email marketing, text marketing. We have scouts now that are, looking at properties for us. So you can
Mm,
sort of outsource yourself out of landing locations. I always tell our mentorship students, if you can just get your first and second, you can usually get two, three, four, five, six, because of referrals. And then that creates a lot of margin at that point. You could outsource some of the front end. As far as the inventory, we automate all of our inventory ordering by location, and so probably we spend, I would say, an hour a week, maybe, on inventory because everything's on autopilot in terms of what's shipped and when. We've
mm,
got that dialed in. That takes a little bit of time, like you said, the upfront time. But once you dial it in, it's very automated. And then stocking's always the big one. People are always like, "But don't you have to keep it stocked?" Yes, and my channel, I talk a lot about this. Like stocking gets kind of a bad rap. It's kind of funny, even though that's how you make money. So I
mhm.
always tell people like, no, like we're all about stocking. The more we can stock, the better. But we don't do it
You're making money, you're selling.
100. And so we want to stock two or three times a week if we can. That's kind of our home run locations that single coolers do. Substantial revenue, 3, 4, 5K. Those are the ones that are being stocked several times a week. What we've done over time is we outsource the stocking. It's roughly 10 to 14% of your gross would go into stocking. We've had really good success building our own stock team using grocery shoppers, which people typically have wherever you're tuning in from, but that's how we've sourced them. So you've got like Instacart and Shipt
Mhm.
is a big one here. And these are very responsible people maintaining lists for people, and we've had fantastic hit rates. And so they come on a set schedule. So we have locations. Everybody's on a set schedule with stocking reps per location. They come certain times a week, grab inventory. At this point, we have just a small office, not huge. You can fit a lot of inventory in one place, and then they grab the inventory, take it out to the unit, complete the software work, and then just they actually send us a text message, just let us know that it's done in a group corporate thread. So that's how we do it, and it's been amazing. Again, everything goes back to location and the margin created by having higher end locations where you can typically do the stocking, let somebody else do it, as well as just being willing to outsource things. But I think people think about vending, they think cheap machine, what I call cheap locations. I just mean lower end locations that aren't doing a lot of revenue. So then you really can't afford to outsource stocking. And then the other thing you mentioned is just the repair on units. And so one of the biggest questions I get from my TikTok content are existing vending business owners who have 20, 30, 40, 50 machines. And one of the first things they always ask me is, who's your technician? And I have to break the news to them like, I don't have one. We don't have a technician. And they're like, what do you mean? And so old school vending equipment, the analogy I use, they're like pinball machines. So there's fuses and there's motors, there's old wiring, there's turnstiles. They're very outdated. And so they're constantly broken because there's so many individual components. The new smart coolers are more like EV vehicles. They're just a lot more efficient. There's just less to them. It's literally a cabinet typically with a compressor that keeps it cold, like your fridge, 10-year design life. So it'd be a rare exception if it went out, and it's usually covered by warranty at that point anyway. But it's that component, the cabinetry, and then the door locking hardware is really important because that's what open and closes transactions. Besides that, it's just like computers built into this cabinetry and software. And so a lot of the stuff, if there is an issue that comes up, is resolved with a software push, remotely.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, that's an interesting point because I feel like a lot of the vending machines that break down, at least from a customer's perspective, is like
Mhm.
a classic food getting stuck,
Sure. Yeah.
as it kind of rotates out.
Yeah.
You don't have that. Like it's an open door, you
That's
select
right.
what you want. There's no stuck inventory.
I mean, one issue that a lot of people ask about is security. That's like a huge one, so sort of
Oh,
like,
yeah. Security.
hey, if it's an open market, like what's keeping everybody from just like taking everything,
Right.
which is a valid question. And so, yeah, I always talk about security. That was one of the things that surprised us because when we got our first smart market, we were like, okay, they tap their card and then the whole thing is open. So, and as I mentioned, you profit card. So that's one very sort of technical financial way to kind of say, and you can pre-auth as much as you want typically. So on the back
Mhm.
end in the software, you would say, I want to be off, $15 no matter what they buy. Of course, pre-auth falls off. It's not a huge deal. But that's one you can do. That's a control mechanism. And then when you're in higher end properties, it's people just don't want to take stuff. So if you're in a high end apartment complex with 400, it's a luxury apartment complex. People want the amenity. They're happy. They love the amenity. We have a QR code on all of our units and we do a monthly newsletter and they love it. The product requests and property managers love it because then people are saying, I'm so glad this is here. And I put in a request for cold brew coffee or protein shakes or whatever. And then on top of all that, all of the smart markets are all video monitored. And so part of the AI that charges the items, which as a side note, that's how it works. You open the unit, you grab a Coke, a water, and a bowl. The AI brain has read all the inventory when you launch the unit. And so it knows what's being taken and then it just pings the card once doors are closed. But it's all video recorded anyway. And so you have that as a second layer of security. And then, as I mentioned, property managers have zero tolerance for any type of security issues because it's terrible for business and the community, as you might expect. And so they'll usually back you up if there ever were a problem. So we've been shocked at how little we've had any type of security concerns because it's a closed door locked smart solution. If you do a micro market, which you've seen, in airports is the most common place you've seen micro markets. That's a different story. You'll typically will have to have a secondary or tertiary video monitoring system, and because it is a self count, honor system, so that has a higher degree of potential, theft or things like that. Again,
Yeah.
it's the location determines everything.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. I mean, I do like that aspect. I mean, you have to tap your credit card just to open it, and whatever they take, the AI camera tracks and then charges them. So even if, they said, "Hey, I'm gonna steal all of this stuff," they're not stealing, like, it's gonna charge the card.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. Yeah, you really can't, steal. And again, in high-end locations, it's not really a thing. We've had just a very small handful of people trying, and they don't realize that how it works. And so then they take 4 or 5 things and, try to guard the camera, but there's cameras in these units like everywhere. There's like 50. We've 100% of the time with 0 cases of loss, it just charges their card.
So the other point I was gonna make, the thought I had was with the old vending machines, and this is, I think, one of the biggest benefits to this new kind of smart cooler system is the fact that you don't have any cash in the machine. And so I
Correct.
think, in the traditional machines, the owner, like it's hard to outsource that. It's same with like self-serving car washes, right? Because it's tough to trust someone to go and restock and take the money and deposit
Yeah.
it appropriately, right? There's always
Mhm.
some leakage there. Whereas this one, it's just all credit card, digital, and so there's, low risk of that.
Sure. Yeah, and I would say that higher end properties, what it's worth, I don't think the users really carry that much cash. And so most people are using their phones to open our coolers and our smart markets. And so they're doing Apple Pay or Google Pay or whatever.
Mm. Yeah.
And so it's great that way. And then, like you said, it's cashless in terms of security and people going and stocking the units and things like that. Depending on what manufacturer or platform you use, they all do weekly or monthly disbursement. So it just goes directly to our account. The other cool part about the technology is that all of the other stuff that kind of comes along with it, things like the video recording that I mentioned, the actual inventory management, which is on an app and, on your phone and obviously cloud based sales software, all that stuff, payment processing, it's all typically under one roof, depending on manufacturer. And so it's just, they take their cutout, send you the net, and it's great. It's very streamlined.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
I feel like another huge benefit of these smart coolers too is, does it send you low inventory alert? Like the example you
Yeah.
gave of is a college buddy party and they took
Yeah.
$300 worth of
Uh-huh.
inventory and it's like, now you have to stock it again. Do you get alerts from that?
For sure. Yeah. Got like min maxes, alerts, so minimum based on the max you want in the
Oh,
unit at
okay.
all times. If it hits a minimum, it'll send you an email or a notification. So yeah, there's all that kind of stuff. The analytics are awesome. So you have real time inventory. I've also the great thing about the inventory too, with the modern method that's been a real breath of fresh air is typically with old school vending, you're going to Costco or Sam's Club or BJ's or whatever, and you're buying kind of way more than you need. It's like, let me just go get one of everything. Then you take all of that inventory to the actual unit, which we always joke, like our first four locations, we stocked out of a Honda Accord, and
Mhm.
which people are like, wait, what? Because old school vending are typically like big vans and refrigerated vans, all this kind of stuff. And the reason is because they're carrying all this excess inventory because they don't know what needs to be stocked at the unit until they're there. And so the mentality old
Mhm.
school is let's take it all on location,
Right.
see what we need, stock it, put the rest in bins, take it back. It's very inefficient, and it's another part of the business that's very fragmented, old school, going through disruption. So with the real time analytics, you're only ordering what you need. It's still imperfect, but instead of getting 50 coats, we know we only need, 36 or whatever. And so we're making sure that we're not over ordering. And so that keeps your cash velocity a lot higher. So you're not having to spend money today that you're like, well, we're going to need to spend it. Might not be this stock, but it's probably three stocks from now. We can keep that money in the meantime in the business and, for wherever you need. And so that's really great too. And it also is all free shipping these days. And so when you're first getting going, you can explore wholesale relationships and stuff like that down the line if you want. Another part of the industry that's very outdated, but you can do, Amazon Prime, Costco, etc., Walmart.com straight to your doorstep. And it goes right into the unit. Or in our case, it comes to the doorstep. Our stock team comes in. That's part of their process is they rack the inventory is what we call it. They rack it, stack it and rack it, and then they, get it out to the unit. But, we've scaled a bit, but it's super efficient. That's what I'm saying. That was like a big shock for us. And when we first got going, we were stocking out of our Honda Accord.
Yeah. How do
So
you how do you figure out, and I know you talk about some of this in the course too. How do you figure out what to stock it with?
good question. Yeah. So the kind of quick breakdown would be location type is the number one factor that you kind of start with. Best example would be like if you're doing a gym, larger gym, you're going to have pre workout, post workout stuff,
Mhm.
right? So you're not going to be selling Cokes in there, Dr. Peppers or whatever. You're going to be pre workout shakes, post workout shakes. You're going to be doing probably maybe beef jerky or maybe even wraps if you get into fresh foods, protein bars, things like that. Very protein oriented, et cetera, et cetera. Then over time at that gym, you'll watch the analytics on the back end of your software. And over the course of approximately 6 months, you'll be able to increase your sales every single month if you pay attention. There's some other extra things we do with our locations, like we do a monthly newsletter, we do signage, we really promote the service, which is
Mhm.
really important and moves the needle big time, even though it sounds like so simple. It's like, no, it's a big deal. It's kind of like being at the movie theater. It's like once you see a picture of the popcorn, you're like, I think I'll go get some. So,
Yeah.
with the gym or an apartment complex, if you put a picture of a energy drink or whatever in the elevators, it's important. It works. So it's location type gives you kind of a basic idea. Apartments, you're going to have probably the usual suspects you would think of. Is people are going to typically come to apartments at the end of the day. They're going to get a refresh. They're going to get maybe a sweet treat, guilty pleasure type stuff to watch Amazon or, Netflix at night. And so you're going to have different stuff there. Same thing, watch the analytics. And then there's other things you can do that are really simple. You can look on Amazon bestsellers. You can Google and AI of choice, top sellers, and things like that. And then a big thing that we do is we do QR codes on all of our locations, which really creates an interactive experience, which again might sound simple to you and I, but like the residents love it. The employees love it. They can do a QR code and say, hey, like, I'd love to have a cold brew coffee here. And then 3 months
Mhm.
from now, we've got a whole row of cold brew coffees, because everyone chimes in. And also, property managers love that because that's what takes this from vending to an amenity, which is the key kind of shift. If you can get out of sort of old school vending machines vending business and get into the amenity mindset, higher end properties, higher end technology, better offerings. That's where one location does two, three, $4,000 a month. It's like, holy cow, what's going on? It's just now it's a value add to the property versus an old school vending machine that's like in the break room that nobody goes to. It's a big
Yeah.
difference. Yeah,
Yeah, it's the property managers want to keep their residents happy, right? And this is part of it is,
big time. Yeah.
can I get drinks and snacks on property
Yeah,
without
and
me?
you're seeing this more. I mean, one really big trendsetter on this whole thing, besides, like you said, you kind of see some of the stuff at airports, and it tends to be kind of the experimental space for vending over the years. I mean, even like Marriott's or Hilton's, you didn't used to have a vending machine maybe near the ice machine or something like that. Now it's right by checkout or a check in. And you've
Mhm.
got these markets that are there and they're selling like all this really good stuff now. It's like, what's going on? It's because it's an amenity, not like, well, we do have vending up on the third floor. The big thing with property managers is they don't want people to have to leave the property. That's one of the secrets of the business. So you can get them to stay on property. It increases property satisfaction because they just go like, yeah, it's all right here. And that's part of the goal. It's why you're seeing co-working spaces now in new construction apartments, golf simulators. I mean, you name it. It's on these new apartments now. It's kind of
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say, as going back to kind of stocking and knowing what to stock, what have you seen as like the most profitable things to stock?
Yeah, high margin items are all of the sort of big players. So, the traditional Cokes and Pepsis and Sprites and things like that all have huge margins. I would say location probably has better margins than others. And because if you're in a gym, to go back to that analogy, those are just expensive products, no matter how you slice it and dice it. Protein shakes, people think like they're expensive. It doesn't matter what brand it is, like it's typically pricey. And so then on the supplier side, it's going to be expensive for you. It's probably going to have lower margins versus Orville Redenbacher popcorn,
Mhm.
where if somebody wants to have popcorn, they're watching Netflix and they come down the elevator or they come in from work, even though you might source that popcorn for 20 cents or 30 cents depending on what kind it is, are they going to blink an eye paying $2 for it? Not at all. They don't care. They can care less. They're not even going to check the price that. And I'm not saying you overcharge them. I'm just saying that those kinds of situations are where you're going to have really high margin products because of the convenience of it and what they're looking for. Yeah, a lot of those things have really, really great margins. Anything that's a meal also has really great margins. And when I say meal, what I mean is you can get a Kraft mac and cheese or a Nissin sweet and sour bowl, and all that stuff's fair game. Somebody's probably going to buy that not thinking I want a snack. They're going to go like, I'm just going to use this for dinner or lunch or something like that. And so that can have even larger margins because now that it's perceived like a meal, you could charge 4, 5, $6 depending on the size of the bowl.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. What are some of the common pitfalls, like, as you've seen kind of students come through for
Yeah.
new operators? What are some common pitfalls you've seen?
Um, One is failure to launch. It's kind of one of the things I say. It's people that sort of the most important thing to do is get out and just talk to location. This is not a like I said, it's not a hard business. Like you definitely have to get out there and hustle, but it's not a complex business. It's drinks and snacks, right? And so it's not a hard sell, no sales experience required. I mean, we've got people in our mentorship just knocking down locations and all walks of life and experiences. It's just because they're willing to get out there. I see a lot of people that like sort of get stuck in, I've got to make sure my logo's good, or I got to have a website, or I've got to make sure I have this and that and this and that. And they kind of just always put off the most important thing, which is, property managers, they don't care about any of that stuff. It's important. What they care about is like, what's the service and how's your stocking, which is the number one complaint in this industry. Ironically, it has nothing to do with equipment, has everything to do with service. And that kind of goes back to the location thing. And that is a lot of operators put in old equipment, therefore it doesn't make money, therefore they don't stock it.
Mhm.
And so taking over accounts from existing vendors is one of the easiest things to do in this space right now because it's very low bar in this industry, which makes it great if you're willing to come in and provide just a professional, great level of service. So that's a big one. Is just not getting out there, and I get on calls with our mentorship students. I'm like, just got to get out there. Just got to, it's the only thing that matters. And so that's a big one. I
Yeah.
think probably a
One point on
close,
that one, though. One point on
yeah,
that one. I also feel like it's probably the most intimidating for probably a lot of people, just because I
yeah,
think a
for
lot of people
sure.
haven't done sales or anything.
Oh, for
But
sure.
I feel like it's one of the ones. This is one of the ones that like is probably one of the easiest to sell because you're not actually selling anything. You're actually trying to provide a
Yeah.
service to people that are already there. And who doesn't want a snack machine available as an option
Right.
wherever they
Yeah.
go.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, one of the scripts, if you will, that we try to encourage our mentorship students to use is, hey, I'm Sam. I have nothing to sell you, just so you know. People, property managers are like, oh, well, thank goodness, or whatever. It
Mm.
just breaks the ice. And then it's just questions, do you have vending on site? Do you have snacks and drinks on site? And obviously, part of the mentorship is to kind of equip our students so they know what to take and what to show them and what to send them after the fact, proposals, questions to ask to make sure it's a good location because not all locations are good. Even if there's a high traffic count, if your placement inside the location isn't good or misaligned, that can result in a bum account. So it's a lot of X's and O's. But yeah, that's the best part about this business. The people in our group are, I mean, teachers, administrators, customer service, engineers, I mean, all different types of professions. And that's why we call it Snackfolio. It's kind of silly, but it works. We're trying to help people build a portfolio of cash flowing smart coolers. And there's just people from all different types of experiences. So it's an essential service, technically. So it's not like an added service that a property may or may not need, where you've got to convince them that it's going to work and things like that. Yeah. And I would just say that probably the close second pitfall is just over analysis on the equipment. That's a big one, just because there's 10 different brands you could use and they're all fine. And I have a lot of students that'll sometimes fall in the trap of continuing to research equipment before they get out and just talk to locations. And as I mentioned when we started, we're all about location first, sign contract, then get your equipment. That way you're cash flowing in your first month, everything that, all your costs and still have a profit. So, but still equipment gets a lot of conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything I missed before we wrap up here? Any last comments or thoughts?
No, I mean, I think this is such a cool time for vending. I mean, vending's kind of old and boring, but it's genuinely going through a massive disruption. And we're really kind of on the very early side of that. I mean, you could build a six-figure vending business just with new construction alone in every single town that people live watching this. If you just did new construction, not to mention all the existing vending that needs to be replaced that are owned by huge brands. We did an account last month, the 800 unit apartment complex, and Coke had the contract. It's like, we took over an account from Coke. It's crazy. And so there's just a lot going on. Huge, huge opportunity if you're willing to come in and just honestly just have a high level of professionalism and service. Like just need any special knowledge or experience. It's a very simple business. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, it's a really fun business.
You set up a discount for the community. So
Yeah.
special discount. Where do they go? Redditvending.com.
Yes, just for you all. I did redditvending.com. And if you go there, it'll take you to just a simple name, email type thing. And then I've got a free training you can watch. It's kind of a launch training. Doesn't cost anything. You can request it there. It'll direct you to it. And it's probably a 15, 20 minute, like here's, if I was starting over today and I wanted to build a six-figure side hustle vending business, what would I do today for the next 2 hours to make it happen? And I walk you through that step by step in the video, show you location examples, kind of some cost analysis and things like that. So yeah, go to redditvending.com and you can pick that up right there. And then my TikTok is a great place for just tons of free content. I've got endless amounts of content on there, pretty in-depth videos too, organized by topic as well.
Awesome. Yeah, redditvending.com. That's going to get you 20%. That's exclusive to this community. So appreciate you doing that for the community. Again, I bought into the course with my own money. It's a great course and the content and the community has been really good. And I remember the question I was going to ask you. Um, just to give people an idea of maybe the potential, what are some of your top students making?
Yeah, so I would say again, it depends on the location type. We have a veterinary clinic that was first month 1,700. We had a horse training facility, multiple thousands of dollars in their first month. Just depends on location type. More traffic, the more revenue. We have our first student that has a manufacturing facility. And there is a couple hundred 12-hour shift employees. And the metrics there on that would be $50 per employee per month. which might sound
Wow.
high, but it's actually not. If you think about it, 21 business days a month, $50 total spend, that's just 2 or 3 bucks a day. So it's really just one drink a day is where that math comes from. So yeah, there's
Wow.
some great action going on. And yeah, I appreciate you mentioning the 20%. If you go to Reddit vending on any of the mentorship stuff that we have, you can unlock a discount just for you all. So
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for joining today, Sam. It was great talking with you, and
yeah,
thanks for all your tips, best practices. And yeah, we'll catch up with you another time.
great to be with you all. See you.
Thanks.